Welcome back. I uncovered a very alarming trend that I'm seeing right now in the US housing market that could kind of depict what's going to happen for the rest of the year. So here is a article I found on Realtor.com's website, just posted today. This covers the entire month of April, the first report I've seen for that month right now. And this video is made on May 2nd. But I want to make this video for you guys. I'm going to try to slow it down here because the stats they're sharing in this report from Realtor.com is the same stats they've been sharing for the past several months. But I'm going to actually look at a deeper dive into inventory numbers because there's some very big changes here. So let's just look at what they had to say first, and I'll talk about what I'm seeing as well that you guys should definitely be aware of. Probably the most important trend I've been seeing, or I have uncovered for quite some time. It says there was 30.4% more houses for sale this April compared to the same time frame in 2023. So on a year-over-year basis, there's an increase of 30.4% in the number of existing houses for sale nationwide. That marks the sixth consecutive month of year-over-year inventory growth. It says, while inventory this April is much improved compared to the previous 3 years, it is still down 35.9% compared to the typical 2017 through 2019's levels for the month of April. So therefore, the amount of houses we have for sale this April is down by about 35.9% compared to pre-COVID levels for the month of April. This is a slight improvement compared to last month, 37.9% gap, as inventory continues to slowly improve toward normalcy. So here's a chart looking at inventory. And let me just briefly explain this. So here's 2017 above the blue line. The red line is 2019, and the orange line is 2018, obviously pre-COVID levels. This line right here is 2020. Obviously, here's 2024. The line just below that is 2023, the green line, 2021, and right below here, 2022. So when I was reading this, I thought, okay, well, yeah, inventory is up by 30% from 1 year ago, which is good because to start the year, we're at very low levels, at least compared to 1 year ago. And also, even though inventory is up by over 30% on a year-to-year basis, it's still down by about 35.9% compared to pre-pandemic levels. Now look at their report from January. In January, they kind of said more or less the same. Inventory in January is still down by 39.7% compared to the typical January 2017 through 2019's levels, down by about 39.7%. Then in February, inventory is still down by 39.6% compared to 2017 through 2019, on par with January at 39.7%. Then in March, still down 37.9% compared to the typical pre-COVID levels. And now we're down by 35.9% this April. Now here's what I noticed, and let me know what you guys think about this as well. I was just eyeballing this. So here's the inventory growth we're seeing right now. Just looking at the growth rate over the past 2 months, inventory to me, just eyeballing this right now, and I'll have some stats to support this. Just eyeballing this, I was looking at this going, gosh, okay, inventory was flat in February, not a lot of big movement compared to January. But March and April, to me, it looked like a bigger change compared to 2017 through 2019. So we're up by 30.4% from a year ago, but we're still way below pre-pandemic levels. So I have some thoughts to share regarding that. But let's actually look at raw data and actually provide this analysis looking at inventory levels. Let me just zoom in really quickly here. There's a lot of numbers here, but I'll walk you through this and just stay with me. I promise that this is there's a spider hanging down from the light. Anyways, there's some very alarming trends that I'm going to uncover for you guys that you guys should absolutely 100% be aware of. I'm not bluffing you guys. So let's look at 2022. We all know that home prices decreased in the second half of the year, and then a decrease on a year-over-year basis to start 2023. So let's look at October of 2022 compared to the levels we saw in October in 2017 through 2019, which, by the way, the average, this, by the way, is data from Realtor.com. You guys can get this on their website. It's Realtor.com/research/data. Click on monthly inventory and then click on this right here, US historical data. Any case, going back here, the average number of houses for sale in October, looking at pre-COVID levels, was just under 1.3 million houses for sale. Compare that to October 2022, there was 752,000, just over that, back then. And that was a 41% decrease compared to pre-COVID levels. So not a big deal, right? We have 41% fewer homes for sale compared to 2017 through 2019. One would assume that home prices will still increase, right? No, right? Because even though inventory was 41% less in October of 2022 compared to the pre-pandemic average during that month, home prices, when I'm talking about home prices, I'm talking about the US median home sold price. Anyways, home prices fell towards the end of the year in 2022 on a month-to-month basis. Then the national median sale price in March of 2023 compared to March of 2022 decreased. That was the first year-over-year decrease since 2012. So just taking a step back here, even though there was 41% fewer houses for sale in October 2022 compared to the pre-COVID levels, or compared to the average pre-COVID levels, home prices started to decrease. And back in, when was this actually? Let me look at this. Back in March of 2023, the US home sold price decreased by 1.1%. That was the first year-over-year decrease since February of 2012. The first time in about 11 years in which home sold prices decreased on a year-over-year basis. Are you guys following me? So right now we're down by 35.9% from pre-COVID levels. And this is kind of what we saw back in 2022, down by 41%. But despite that, inventory was increasing. But despite that, home prices tanked, especially in the last half of 2022 and the early parts of 2023. So why did home prices decrease so much, even though we were down greatly, down by 40%? And the reason is this right here. I added this column. These two columns is what I pulled from Realtor.com's website, but I actually added this as well. So I actually want to look at the year-to-date change for the entire year of 2022. So to start the year, let's just look at February, we're down by 8% compared to January. Then we saw a decrease as well in March, and then we only saw a 1% gain from January through April. Then the inventory numbers started to skyrocket greatly starting in May. So May compared to January, up by 27%. Then by the time we hit October of 2022, inventory doubled. So inventory doubled in about 10 months, going from about 377,000 up to about 752,000. So inventory doubled in 10 months. And so therefore, in my personal opinion, the reason why home prices started to decrease in the last half of 2022 into the early parts of 2023 is due to the rate of change, a huge increase over the past 10 months. Inventory basically started skyrocketing once we hit May of 2022. Okay, I hope you guys are still with me because again, when looking at the 2022 correction, we're still way below the average compared to 2017 through 2019, which is exactly what we're seeing right now, right? Down by 35.9% right now, at least for the month of April. So here's a look at inventory, the growth rate of inventory this year compared to years past. And I hope you guys are still watching today's video because this took me hours and hours. I spent all day on this because I was just trying to figure out, to me, this does not make sense. Inventory, to me, looks like it's increasing much more compared to previous years. And so rather than looking at a point in time compared to what we're seeing this month, I want to share the growth rate. So in any case, the year-to-date change this year, this is January through April this year, is a giant increase of 10% so far this year. That's about 68,000, nearly 69,000 more houses for sale nationwide right now, or I should say by the end of April, compared to January. Now look what happened in 2019, 18, and 17. So 2017, the change from January to April was a 4% gain. Then 2018, a 6% gain. 2019, from January to April again, it only increased by 2%, whereas this year it rose by 10%. So that's basically 5 times the rate we saw in 2019, about double compared to 2018, and more than double compared to 2017. Also, check this out because the biggest change from January to April, looking at these years, was actually in 2018, and that was an environment in which rates were increasing. So there was 58,000 more houses for sale in April 2018 compared to January. What's alarming about this is that look at this year. Remember, there's far fewer houses for sale right now, again, down by 35.9% compared to the average pre-COVID levels. Even though we have 36% fewer houses for sale, we have more houses being listed for sale from January to April this year compared to years past. Nearly 69,000 more houses for sale compared to January, whereas we only had 58,000 in 2018, 26,000 in 2019, and only 44,000 in 2017. So what the heck does this all mean? Look at this. Here's the change from January to April this year, which is right here, 68,749. Compare that to the average January to April change from 2017 through 2019, which is this right here, nearly 43,000. This means that there's 63% more houses for sale this January compared to April this year compared to the pre-pandemic average. So in other words, just taking a step back here, the growth rate of inventory is absolutely skyrocketing compared to historical norms. Despite the fact we have 35.9% fewer houses for sale this April compared to the average April in 2017 through 19. What's also alarming about this as well is that, again, we're up by 10% year to date so far this year. Remember, home prices corrected in 2022, right? The last half of 2022. So at this time in 2022, inventory only increased by 1%. There's only 3,000 more houses for sale. Right now, there's nearly 69,000. So it's pretty alarming comparing the growth rate we're seeing this year compared to 2022. So far, we're seeing, of course, far higher inventory growth this year compared to then. A couple of things I do want to mention, though, comparing this year to 2022, is that inventory did not start gaining momentum until May of 2022. As you can see right here, inventory surged by 27% compared to January, whereas in April, it only increased by 1%. And of course, the reason why inventory absolutely skyrocketed in 2022 was due to the fact that mortgage rates on average doubled from January to September of 2022. And that caused home sales to absolutely nosedive. In contrast, the number of newly listed houses started to decrease big time in the last half of 2022. So therefore, the growth rate of inventory that we saw in the last half of 2022 was really due to a pullback in home buying demand, a sharp pullback in home buying demand due to rates doubling from January to September of that year. I mentioned that because, even though we're seeing a sharp increase of inventory, up by 10% so far this year, which of course is much higher compared to what you saw 2 years ago. The dynamics are drastically different, right? We have this higher for longer environment right now in which rates have been, at or above 6% all year. Whereas in 2022, rates more than doubled in about 9 months. And of course, that shocked the housing market. But something to follow here in the months ahead. And I might, make this a monthly video for you guys because, again, I talk about this on the channel all the time. Even though we have far fewer houses for sale right now compared to pre-COVID levels, it doesn't mean that home prices can't decrease. And that's exactly what we saw in 2022, where inventory did not even get close to pre-pandemic levels. But despite that, home prices absolutely corrected in the last half of the year. Now, speaking of that, here is my own analysis of the National Association of Realtors data regarding the national median home sold price. So in January of 2022, we're up by 15.3%. Let me just zoom in for you guys. Up by 15.3%. Then in February, we're up by 15.6. Then it started to decrease though, right? Going to 14, it increased in May, but then it started decreasing again. By the time we hit October of 2022, we were only up by 6.5%. About half the gain we saw from the previous June that year. Then once we hit, let me just go back here. Once we hit November, we were up by 4%. Then we're up by 2%. And the numbers got lower and lower until we hit March of 2022, the first year-over-year decrease since February of 2012. And again, that was due to the growth rate of inventory. Inventory absolutely skyrocketed from the lows we saw in February at around 603,000. This is according to data from Redfin. And then by the time we hit the end of August, we're at 979,000, a sharp increase of inventory, which absolutely corrected the housing market back then. So I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you guys think about today's video and the fact that we have 63% more houses for sale compared to January this year, compared to the average in 2017 through 2019. Back then, the growth rate was actually less than 7%. Now we're up by 10% so far this year. This is something I'm definitely gonna follow closely here because, again, in my opinion, we should be following the growth rate of inventory, not keep to this narrative regarding we have far fewer houses compared to the average pre-COVID levels. But what do you guys think about my analysis here? Something I really hope you guys watch today's video because I was absolutely shocked by these numbers here. And if this number starts to increase big time, we could be in a different place by the end of the year this year. But please leave me a comment below with your thoughts regarding this analysis. If you guys got any value of today's video, then please hit the like button. I greatly appreciate that. Of course, I appreciate you. Hope you guys have an awesome day and look forward to seeing you on the next video.